January 5th, 1931. A winter chill grips Berlin, but inside the dining room of Hermann Goering's residence, the atmosphere is electric, almost suffocating. A dinner is taking place. It is perhaps the most consequential meal in the history of the 20th century. At this table sit two men who, on the surface, belong to different species. On one side, you have Adolf Hitler, the agitator, the man of chaos, of shouting crowds, of brown shirts and street violence. He is the fire. On the other side sits a man who looks like he was born wearing a stiff collar and a pince-nez, Hjalmar Schacht, the embodiment of the German establishment, a genius of numbers, a man of ice. This was their first personal reckoning, and after this dinner, history would pivot. Schacht would become one of Hitler's men. But you must understand, he was never just one of them. He was not a thug who could be barked at. He was not a sycophant who nodded when the Führer screamed. He was the only man in the entire Third Reich who could look Hitler in the eye, raise his voice, and tell him he was wrong. He could criticize the Nazi Party in the newspapers, he could mock their economic ignorance, and Hitler would take it. Why? Why would a dictator who murdered rivals without blinking tolerate this arrogance? Because Hitler knew a terrifying truth. He could charm the crowds, he could command the soldiers, but he could not make the numbers add up. Only Schacht could do that. Schacht was the engine, he was the architect. He was the man who would eventually pull off the greatest financial heist in human history, swindling America, France, and Britain to build the Nazi war machine right under their noses. But to understand how we got to this table in 1931 and how this banker became the devil's accountant, we have to go back. We have to peel back the layers of a man named Hjalmar Schacht. Born into a capable, well-to-do family, Schacht was brilliance personified. By 1899, he had his doctorate in economics. By 1903, he was sitting on the board of a German bank. He was climbing the ladder, rung by rung. But Schacht wasn't just smart. He was infected with a specific kind of vanity. He didn't just want to be rich. Plenty of dull men get rich. He wanted to be the smartest man in the room. He wanted the world to point at him and say, "There, that is the man who moves the levers." He collected relationships with the same greed that others collected coins. Politicians, industrialists, foreign dignitaries. He built a web. But there is a moment, a single burning memory, that turned this ambitious banker into a man obsessed with vengeance. The year is 1919. The Great War is over. Germany lies broken, bleeding in the mud. The Treaty of Versailles is being hammered out, and a German delegation of bankers and businessmen is sent to the Netherlands to negotiate with the Allied Committee regarding payments in kind. Basically, the victors were deciding how much of Germany's physical wealth they would strip away. Schacht is part of this delegation. He arrives in the Netherlands expecting the courtesy due to a diplomat. Instead, he finds humiliation. The Allies have booked them into the worst hotel in the city. The food is inedible sludge. They are forbidden from walking freely in the streets. They are watched like criminals, herded like cattle. It was a calculated display of contempt. But the breaking point comes on the day of the negotiation itself. Imagine the scene. The heavy wooden doors of the conference hall swing open. The German delegation walks in, files in hand, ready to plead their case. They look around the room. There are chairs for the French, chairs for the British, chairs for the Americans. There are no chairs for the Germans. Schacht freezes. It isn't an oversight, it is a statement. You are not our equals. You are the losers. You stand. A rage, cold and sharp, rises in Schacht's throat. He speaks up, his voice trembling not with fear but with fury. He demands to know why they are being treated like servants. The Allied negotiator barely looks up from his papers and sneers. "You seem to have forgotten that your country lost the war." They conducted the entire negotiation standing up. Schacht stood there, his legs aching, his pride shattered, burning with a silent vow. He would never forget this. He would take this humiliation, freeze it in his heart, and sharpen it into a weapon. For 20 years, that memory would drive him. He would wait for the moment to slap the world in the face just as they had slapped him. And he would get his chance, but not yet. First, his country had to die. Fast forward to 1923. If you think you know what inflation means, you don't. You know about prices going up. You know about things getting expensive. What happened in Germany in 1923 was not economics. It was a horror movie. The German mark didn't just lose value, it evaporated. The currency was in free fall. In the morning, a coffee cost 5,000 marks. Schacht is watching this apocalypse from his office at one of Germany's major banks. He is seeing his nation turn into a chaotic asylum. Enter an old friend, Gustav Stresemann. Stresemann has just become the new Chancellor of Germany. He is the man tasked with saving the Titanic after it has already hit the iceberg. He knows that before he can fix the politics, before he can fix the hunger, he has to fix the money. You cannot run a country if the money is a lie. Stresemann looks at the chaos and thinks of one man, the smartest man he knows, the arrogant genius, Hjalmar Schacht. But there is a snag, a bureaucratic absurdity. Stresemann wants Schacht to take over the Reichsbank, the central bank, to stop the printing presses. But the current president of the Reichsbank is still there. And by German law, the head of the central bank is untouchable. He cannot be fired. He is appointed for life or until he resigns. You can't just walk in and say, "You're incompetent, get out." Stresemann tries. He goes to the current president and begs him, "Look around you. The country is burning. Let someone else try." The president refuses. He clings to his chair while the country collapses. So Stresemann, desperate and crafty, pulls a trick. He invents a job. He creates a new position within the Ministry of Finance called the Currency Commissioner. It sounds official, but it's a made-up title. He goes to Schacht and says, "I can't make you president of the bank yet, but I can make you this. Take it. Fix the money." Schacht accepts. He walks into the Ministry of Finance ready to save Germany. And what does he find? A closet. Literally. They gave him a tiny room, barely a storage closet. It had a desk, a telephone, and one secretary. That was it. And that was the headquarters for the salvation of the German economy. Schacht sits down in that cramped room, rolls up his sleeves, and looks at the problem. The old mark is dead. It is waste paper. He needs to create a new currency. He calls it the Rentenmark. But here is the problem. Money is faith. You accept a piece of paper because you believe it is worth something. Usually, the faith is backed by gold. If you have gold in the vault, the paper is good. Germany had no gold. The vaults were empty. The war and the reparations had drained everything. So how do you make people trust a piece of paper when you have nothing to back it up? This is where Schacht proves he is a wizard. He performs an act of psychological hypnosis on an entire nation. He announces, "This new Rentenmark is not backed by gold. It is backed by the soil of Germany. It is backed by every farm, every factory, every acre of land in our nation." Now, stop and think about that. It is nonsense. You cannot exchange a banknote for a heavy clump of Bavarian soil. You cannot walk into a bank and demand a brick from a factory wall. It was an economic fiction, a mortgage on the entire country that could never actually be collected. But Schacht sold it with such conviction, with such absolute arrogance and authority, that the people believed him. He told them, "This is real because I say it is real." And the miracle happened. The panic stopped. People looked at the new notes and thought, "Yes, this is backed by our land." They started using it. They stopped rushing to spend it the second they got it. The velocity of money slowed down. Almost overnight, the inflation that was running at millions of percent crashed down to a manageable 15%. The fever broke. The shops opened. The bread had a price again. Schacht had done the impossible. He had created value out of thin air. From that moment on, the German press gave him a new name. They didn't just call him a banker. They called him the magician. And let's be honest, Schacht loved it. He soaked up the adulation like a sponge. But fate wasn't done helping him. November 15th, 1923. The old president of the Reichsbank, the man who refused to resign, is sitting in his office. He looks at what this upstart Schacht has done. He sees that Schacht, from a broom closet, has stabilized the currency that he, the president, had destroyed. The humiliation is too much. The stress is too high. He has a heart attack and dies. The path is clear. On December 20th, 1923, Hjalmar Schacht is officially appointed president of the Reichsbank. The king has arrived at his castle. For the next 7 years, from 1923 to 1930, Schacht is the financial emperor of Germany. He is the toast of the town. He travels to London, to New York, to Paris. He charms the governor of the Bank of England, Montague Norman. He befriends the titans of Wall Street. He uses his perfect English and his sharp wit to convince the world that Germany is a safe bet again. Loans start flowing in. American money pours into Berlin. Germany begins to rise from the ashes, and it is Schacht holding the trowel. But you know how this story goes. The higher the pedestal, the harder the fall. 1929. The world is changing. The Great Depression is looming on the horizon like a black storm cloud. But before the crash hits, Schacht wants one more victory. He wants to renegotiate the reparations, the massive debts Germany owes for World War I. He wants to free his country from the chains of Versailles. He travels to the negotiations for what will become known as the Young Plan. He fights hard. He argues. And he succeeds. He manages to reduce the debt significantly and stretches the payments out over decades, making them manageable. It is a win, a purely mathematical victory. But when he returns to Germany, expecting a parade, he walks into a political buzzsaw. The mood in Germany has turned ugly. The far-right parties are rising. They are screaming that any payment to the Allies is treason. They shout that Germany should pay nothing. They call the Young Plan the enslavement of the German people. And suddenly, Schacht, the magician, is the villain. The newspapers tear him apart. They paint him as a collaborator, a man who shook hands with the enemy. The pressure is unbearable. His old friend Gustav Stresemann, the man who gave him his start, cannot take it. Under the immense strain of the political attacks, Stresemann suffers a massive stroke and dies at the age of 50. Schacht looks around. His friend is dead. The economy is teetering again as the American stock market crashes. The German people are screaming for blood. So, in a move that is pure Schacht, petulant, dramatic, and calculated, he quits. He throws his resignation on the table in 1930 and walks away. If you don't appreciate me, he thinks, I will let you drown. He leaves the Reichsbank. He packs his bags. He decides to travel the world, to see America, to relax, to let Germany realize what they have lost. But it is on this trip, crossing the Atlantic Ocean on a luxury liner, that the next chapter begins. Sitting in a deck chair, watching the gray waves of the Atlantic, Schacht opens a book. It is a poorly written, rambling manifesto by a failed artist and political agitator. The book is Mein Kampf. Schacht reads it. He doesn't agree with everything. He finds the racial theories crude. But he sees something else. He sees energy. He sees a raw, unrefined national will. He sees a movement that could be harnessed. He thinks, this Hitler, he is a brute, but he is a force, and forces can be steered. Schacht returns to Germany with a new plan. He is 53 years old. He is unemployed. He is wealthy, yes, but he is bored. He needs a stage. He needs a vehicle to return to power. And he looks at the Nazi Party, this chaotic group of brawlers who know nothing about money, and he sees his opportunity. He thinks he can use them. He thinks he can ride the tiger without being eaten. Upon his return, a meeting is arranged. December 1930. The dinner I told you about at the beginning. But before the dinner, there was the courtship. Schacht meets with Hermann Goering first. They sniff each other out. Goering, the corrupt, drug-addicted flying ace, and Schacht, the sober banker. They realize they can help each other. Then comes the meeting with Hitler. Hitler plays the part perfectly. He knows who Schacht is. He knows he needs the legitimacy that Schacht brings. If Schacht, the savior of the mark, supports the Nazis, then the Nazis aren't just street thugs anymore. They are a government in waiting. Hitler is humble. He listens. He speaks of restoring Germany's honor. He speaks of work for the workers. He nods when Schacht talks economics. Schacht leaves the dinner convinced. He tells his friends, this man is not what you think. He is reasonable. He can be guided. It was the most catastrophic miscalculation of his life. Or perhaps it was exactly what he wanted to believe. Schacht gets to work. He doesn't put on a brown shirt. He doesn't march in the streets. He does what he does best. He opens his Rolodex. He organizes meetings with the titans of German industry. Krupp, Siemens, the coal barons, the steel magnates. He gathers them in plush boardrooms and tells them, gentlemen, the choice is simple. It is either Hitler or it is the communists. If the communists win, they take your factories. If Hitler wins, he buys your steel. Choose. The money starts to flow. Millions of marks pour into the Nazi war chest, laundered through Schacht's reputation. In the elections that follow, the Nazi Party surges, taking 33% of the vote. They are now the largest power in the land. But there is one final obstacle. The old president of Germany, Paul von Hindenburg, the ancient war hero, despises Hitler. He calls him that Bohemian corporal. He refuses to name Hitler chancellor. Schacht intervenes again. He organizes a petition. He gets the most powerful businessmen in the country to sign a letter to Hindenburg, urging him to appoint Hitler for the sake of stability. Schacht puts his own name right at the top. It works. On January 30th, 1933, Adolf Hitler is named Chancellor of Germany. The darkness has descended, but Hitler has a problem. He has promised the people work and bread, but the coffers are empty. He needs money to secure his grip on power. He calls Schacht. I need 3 million marks, Hitler says, for the upcoming election campaign. I need to crush the opposition once and for all. Schacht doesn't blink. Consider it done. He gathers 25 of the richest men in Germany for a secret meeting at Goering's palace. Hitler walks in and delivers a speech. He promises them stability. He promises them that the trade unions will be crushed. He promises that this will be the last election for a very long time. Schacht passes the hat. In just a few days, he raises the 3 million marks. The Nazi propaganda machine goes into overdrive. And then conveniently, the Reichstag burns down. The parliament building is gutted by fire. The Nazis blame the communists. Panic sweeps the nation. Hitler uses the emergency to suspend civil liberties, arrest his enemies, and consolidate total power. Now, Hitler turns to the economy. He calls the current president of the central bank, a man named Hans Luther. Hitler asks for money for public works. Luther, a prudent man, hesitates. He talks about budgets and deficits. Hitler hangs up the phone. He hates hesitation. He calls, Schacht. How would the Reichsbank help me reduce unemployment? Schacht knows exactly what to say. Mein Führer, the Reichsbank's job is to ensure that every German has a job. We will find the money. We will fund the projects. We will do whatever is necessary. Hitler smiles. Would you like your old job back? Yes, Schacht says. But what about Hans Luther? You cannot just fire him. Hitler laughs. Leave that to me. Hitler offers Hans Luther a nice, comfortable job as the ambassador to the United States. Luther, realizing he is lucky to escape with his life, accepts. Schacht is back. It is March 1933. He is president of the Reichsbank again. A few months later, he becomes Minister of Economics. He holds all the keys. Now the real game begins. Hitler summons Schacht and gives him the secret order. The order that violates every treaty, every law, and every promise Germany has made to the world. I want you to build me a Wehrmacht, Hitler says. I want an army. I want tanks. I want planes. And I want it done now. Schacht looks at the numbers. To build the army Hitler wants will cost billions. Germany doesn't have billions. And even if they did, the moment they start buying vast amounts of steel and rubber, the British and French will know. They will see the accounts. They will invoke the Treaty of Versailles and invade to stop the rearmament. So Schacht has two problems. He has no money, and if he borrows the money openly, the world will know Germany is preparing for war. A lesser man would have given up. Schacht cracked his knuckles and invented one of the most brilliant, complex, and criminal financial schemes in history. He invented the MIFO bill. Schacht did not use the government. He used a ghost. He created a company, a dummy corporation. On paper, it had a very boring, very official-sounding name, Metallurgische Forschungsgesellschaft, the Society for Metallurgical Research. The acronym was MIFO. If you went to the registered address of this titan of industry, you wouldn't find smokestacks or factories. You would find an empty office. The company had a starting capital of just 1 million marks, pocket change. But this tiny, invisible company began to issue bills, billions of marks worth of bills. Here's how the scam worked. It was genius in its simplicity. Let's say you are Krupp, the steel magnate. You just built 100 tanks for Hitler. You want to be paid. The government doesn't pay you in cash. Instead, this ghost company, MIFO, gives you a promissory note, a glorified I. Oh, you. That says, we will pay you 1 million marks in 6 months. Now, normally you'd be furious. You can't pay your workers with an I. OU from a ghost. But Schacht added the magic ingredient. He went to all the German banks and said, if anyone brings you a MIFO bill, you accept it as if it were gold. The Reichsbank guarantees it. We will cash it. Suddenly, these pieces of paper became money. The arms manufacturers took them. They traded them with each other. They used them to pay suppliers. The banks held them in their vaults as assets. And because these bills never technically appeared on the government ES official budget, because they were private debts of a private company, nobody outside of Germany knew the true scale of the spending. The British looked at the German budget and thought, oh, they're spending a little on roads, a little on uniforms, nothing to worry about. In reality, Schacht was pumping 12 billion marks into the military. 12 billion. He was printing a shadow currency that existed parallel to the real one. He was fueling the greatest rearmament in history on credit that didn't technically exist. And it worked. It worked too well. Factories roared back to life. Unemployment vanished. The autobahns were being built. The world looked at Germany and saw a miracle. They didn't see the debt bomb ticking underneath the floorboards. It was so convincing that even foreign investors bought the lie. American corporations, British banks, they saw the stability Schacht had created and they poured money in. General Motors, Standard Oil, IBM, they invested in this booming new Germany. Schacht took their dollars and pounds to buy the raw materials he couldn't print, rubber, oil, copper. He used the enemy's money to build the weapons that would eventually kill their sons. By 1936, Hjalmar Schacht is at the zenith of his power. He is the economic czar. He has defeated inflation, he has tricked the Allies, and he has given Hitler his army. He walks through Berlin like a god. But in the distance, the thunder is rolling. You see, an economy is like a steam engine. You can shovel coal in and make it go faster and faster. But if you don't stop, if you don't release the pressure, the boiler explodes. Schacht knew this. He looked at the numbers in 1936 and saw the red lights flashing. The MIFO bills were coming due. The debt was astronomical. Germany was importing far more raw materials than it could pay for. The miracle was overheating. Schacht goes to Hitler. He walks into the chancellery, not as a sycophant, but as the grim reaper of mathematics. Mein Führer, he says, we must stop. Hitler looks at him confused. Stop? We are just getting started. Schacht tries to explain. We have built the foundation. But now we must return to normal economics. We must cut military spending. We must focus on exports to pay our debts. If we keep printing ghost money, inflation will return. The currency will die. Hitler's eyes go cold. This is not what he wants to hear. Hitler doesn't care about inflation. He doesn't care about debt. He cares about Lebensraum, living space, conquest. He wants to take Austria. He wants to take Czechoslovakia. He wants to take Poland. And to do that, he needs more guns, not fewer. This is the moment the marriage ends. This is the moment the logic of the banker collides with the madness of the ideologue. Hitler decides he needs a new economic leader, someone who won't say impossible, someone who won't talk about interest rates and trade deficits. He needs a brute. He chooses Hermann Goering. Now, Goering knows as much about economics as a cow knows about astrophysics. He is a morphine addict, a looter, a man who treats the state treasury as his personal piggy bank. But he has one qualification that Schacht lacks. He will do whatever Hitler says, reality be damned. In late 1936, Hitler announces the 4-year plan. It is a plan to make Germany completely self-sufficient, ready for total war within 4 years. He puts Goering in charge. Schacht is sidelined. He is furious. He watches Goering issue orders that make no sense. Goering demands that Germany produce synthetic oil and rubber from coal at a cost 10 times higher than the world market price. He bans imports. He seizes assets. He runs the economy like a warlord looting a village. Schacht can't stay silent. He starts shouting in meetings. He insults Goering to his face. There is a famous story where Schacht is lecturing Goering on why his policies will cause inflation. Goering slams his fist on the table and screams, "If the Führer wishes it, then 2 times 2 is 5. Schacht stares at him, adjusts his glasses, and says with dripping disdain, "I'm afraid, Herr Goering, that even for the Führer, the laws of mathematics remain stubborn." The tension becomes a war. Schacht writes letters to Hitler, long, detailed, scathing letters, criticizing the corruption, the waste, the sheer stupidity of the Nazi leadership. He thinks his brilliance protects him. He thinks Hitler can't afford to lose him. He is wrong. Hitler has the army now. The tanks are built. The planes are flying. He doesn't need the architect anymore. He needs drivers. Schacht has served his purpose. He was the booster rocket that got the Nazi regime into orbit. Now he is just dead weight to be jettisoned. In November 1937, Schacht is forced to resign as Minister of Economics. He remains president of the Reichsbank for a little longer, a figurehead, watching powerless as the train speeds toward the cliff. But the final break comes in 1939. Hitler is demanding the Reichsbank print money directly to fund the invasion of Poland. Schacht refuses. He drafts a memo, signed by the other directors of the bank, stating bluntly, "This is the path to ruin. We will not do it." Hitler reads the memo. He calls Schacht into his office on January 19th, 1939. It is a short meeting. Hitler doesn't scream. He's calm. He hands Schacht a piece of paper. It is his dismissal. "You simply don't fit into the National Socialist picture," Hitler tells him. Schacht takes the paper. He packs his briefcase. He leaves the Reichsbank. 8 months later, Hitler invades Poland. World War II begins. The tragedy of Hjalmar Schacht is not that he failed, it is that he succeeded. He built the weapon that destroyed Europe. He sat in his home in the countryside, listening to the radio as the panzer divisions, financed by his MIFO bills, built with the steel he procured, rolled over Warsaw, then Paris, then into Russia. He had wanted to make Germany a great power, an economic giant respected by the world. Instead, he had armed a suicide bomber. As the war turned against Germany, Schacht became a ghost in his own country. He was arrested by the Gestapo in 1944 after the failed assassination attempt on Hitler. He ended the war not as a Nazi leader, but as a prisoner in a concentration camp, marching alongside the very people the regime was trying to exterminate. It was a final, dark paradox. As the smoke cleared in 1945 and the victors placed the Nazi rulers on trial at Nuremberg, Schacht stood there among the accused. Goering was there. Ribbentrop was there, and Schacht sat apart from them, refusing to speak to them, looking at them with utter contempt. He argued that he was just a banker, that he tried to stop the madness, that he fought Hitler from the inside. The court acquitted him. He walked free. But history has not acquitted him. Because without Hjalmar Schacht, the beer hall agitator might have remained just a voice shouting in the wind. It was Schacht who gave the monster its teeth. So, when you look back at the 20th century, don't just look at the men in the uniform shouting from the balconies. Look for the quiet man in the stiff collar standing in the shadows behind them. Look for the man who knows how to move the numbers. Because while the dictator screams about blood and soil, it is the banker who buys the shovel. This was the story of Hjalmar Schacht, the magician, the genius, the architect of ruin. Thank you for joining us on this journey through history. If you found this analysis valuable, please like and subscribe to support the channel. The next story is already waiting for you. Click the video on your screen now to uncover the next chapter. See you there.